Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video about how video games affect the brain. Today we'll be pulling from a fairly popular TED Talk named Your Brain on Video Games. This video aims to redirect misplaced beliefs on how video games truly affect people and their environment. Video games have spread throughout the world like a plague. Kind of like the bubonic plague, just less gritty, bloody, and full of nasty warts. Anyways, it spreads back to as far as 1999, say with this gem. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker of the TED Talk, Daphne Bavelier. She's quite the gentle soul. She is currently a professor at Geneva, and she recently worked at the University of Rochester. She studies under cognitive neuroscience and likes to look at how video games affect the brain. Picture an older woman from Geneva with a microphone and a nice pair of dress shoes. Spitting image, right? But I digress. Dr. Bavelier, as I said before, works in the cognitive neuroscience field, and in her TED Talk she brings light to issues such as common stereotypes that people have towards people who do play video games, and ways to help improve dexterity and other human functioning through the use of video games. Remember all those crazy times your parents told you that video games made you violent? Well, they're wrong. So, because you play video games, your parents all of a sudden assume you're going to turn into some violent psychopathic killer, which is wrong because psychopaths aren't always actually that violent, so it's more of a correlation than causation. Anyways, many people think that, yeah, you're going to go crazy and kill someone. Oh no. But in reality, video games don't always make people violent because not everyone out there who plays video games is actually going murdering, raping, and pillaging their nearby village. It's just like when people watch action or violent movies on TV. When you pick up that anime called Mirai Nikki, where the crazy pink-haired girl goes around and, slaughters everyone that wants to touch her boyfriend, you don't turn into some crazy psychopathic killer with an MP5K shooting up a store. So what I'm really trying to say is, if you're watching a show that the psychopathic killer is murdering everyone, you're not actually going to become a psychopathic killer, and because of this, playing video games won't actually make you violent or a psychopathic killer. These are common, as Dr. Bavelier put it, barroom discussion questions that people will talk about. So instead of taking this to the bar or taking a few drinks, she actually took this into the field, looked at the research behind it, the cognitive functioning, and she addresses these types of issues in video games and people. So in Dr. Bavelier's speech, she actually brought up how much people do play video games. Just alone in the franchise of Call of Duty, players have played for 25 billion hours according to ArcadeSushi.com. This actually equates to 2.85 million years of playtime. That's a lot. But I gotta say, those are rookie numbers. Taking things piece by piece is okay. Taking things in large 24-hour chunks is bad for us. Just like taking too many Viagra pills is really bad for you. You just don't do it. Unless if you want to go to the hospital for like a week. So there are obvious concerns about things like this, like vision, how this is affecting people who continually play video games. If we even have an intelligent population anymore, here's the answer: we don't. So, like I said, people seem to have this predefined notion that more screen time equals worse eyesight. This, frankly, appears not to be the case due to research that has been done in this field. The research that has been done has actually correlated that gamers have better vision. Note that this is not indeed a causation, but instead a correlation, which means there may or may not be a relationship, but more often than not, there is a relationship there. For instance, when playing 5v5 competitive sharpshooters like Counter-Strike Global Offensive, we see scenes like this, where A man walks into market on Mirage, and we'll stop the frame here. Can you spot the discrepancy here? Market looks clear, head into sight, stop some terrorists, defuse the bomb, you know, normal things. Boom, right there. As you can see, this is actually a pretty hard item to spot, but for most gamers, they can spot this fairly easily, so, you know, rest in pieces, toes. This is just one of several examples that could have been pulled from any type of video game where you actually need to pay attention to minute details like that to stop yourself from being, you know, one tapped in the head by the enemy that you didn't see around the corner. ADHD is kind of just like, it's a word that's just thrown out there, like, oh, that kid can't sit still, he's got ADHD. People think that about gamers all the time. They say that this causes attention problems because they're not always having stimulation to keep them going. This is one of the points that Dr. Bavelier highlights in her TED Talk. However deficit in attention the population really thinks that people are, they're actually fairly good at keeping track of multiple objects at the same time. Games actually kind of feed into this and train this in people who play video games. Take, for example, you're playing a Call of Duty game. You run out there on the battlefield with your AK-47, shooting up the enemies with every 7.62 round that you have. You have to pay attention to who's behind you, if there's a friendly to your right, if you're about to get munched on by that 7-kill streak dog. Well, it's not 7 kills anymore, but you have to pay attention to many different things that are coming at you all at the same time. Like, it's just a ton of stimuli that you have to keep track of without actually thinking about it. Now, this is the case in a majority of these action-packed video games, as Dr. Bavelier calls them. If you take a look at The Witcher 3, you're seen fighting multiple enemies at the same time who are all surrounding you, and you have to make sure you're hitting the right buttons, dodging the attacks, countering. This model can also be seen in Assassin's Creed 3, where you're also fighting multiple enemies with different key combinations in order to counter and rout the enemy. So, as you're busy keeping track of all this, you have to remember where things go, what's going on, and whether or not you're about to die by something that you didn't pay attention to, like this grenade. So, to sort of wrap this up, Bavelier's looking to use video games to create tests to help improve the populace's vision, other reflexes that are brought about in these types of video games, and you really got to keep those eyes peeled. So keeping track of multiple objects brings forth the problem of multitasking. Is it real? Does it exist? Is that juice 3 days old? So here's Bill. He's just an average guy who thinks he's this phenomenal multitasker. What you really didn't know about Bill is that when he says he's a really good multitasker, he actually means he likes to surf the web while listening to his podcast and watching The Walking Dead on TV. Man, Bill, that's so great. I'm glad you're such a multi-talented person, multitasking and shit. In reality, he's defective. What Bill doesn't realize is that people like Dr. Bavelier saw his kind coming from a mile away. She brings about the point that different types of media do not equal each other, such as listening to music while watching TV and talking to your friends through your messaging app. That's completely different than doing something in a fast-paced action scenario. On average, video gamers tend to be better at multitasking than Bill. This is again a correlation. But this is also because Bill's an idiot. This is indicative that gamers are actually able to not actually multitask, such as doing all of the same things at the same exact time. That is actually impossible. What it really means is that gamers are a lot better at switching tasks quickly with little resistance from the environment. Skills like this are actually really important to everyday life because when you're driving, you're paying attention to multiple things at the same time. the mailbox on the left side of the road, the car coming in the opposing lane, whether or not you're going to hit that kid that just kicked the ball in the street. Here's a hint, you actually hit him. Now you're going to jail. So, gamers are the better multitaskers. Despite this evidence, multimedia taskers, when they take an exam or a performance test, they tend to believe that they actually did a lot better than what they actually scored. But in reality, just because Bill thinks that he passed that exam with flying colors doesn't mean he actually did. In reality, he failed because, well, he's just that stupid. Sorry, Bill. So with all of this data and research, Bavelier is actually trying to help better this population. She wants us to know that general wisdom is not actually all-encompassing, meaning that things like saying children are going to be violent because they play violent video games is not always true. Spending more time in front of a TV is going to make your vision piss poor. Also may not be true, but also may be, although the correlations show that people actually have better vision. Lastly, Bill sure as hell doesn't know what he's doing, and I don't know why he thinks he's such a great person. However, there are cases where these correlations don't actually exist, and this is not actually correct. This happens, the world is uncertain. Now that I've explained this TED Talk, you might be asking, why the hell is Captain Crunch's full name Horatio Magellan Crunch? Why was ketchup really sold as medicine in the 1830s? And when are they finally going to release Half-Life 3, for Christ's sake? For the more educated audiences, you might ask, when will training programs be introduced in order to help the general populations that have deficits in these areas? How will future research help implement interesting games with more directed learning content? And in what ways can people with these abilities be used to the advantage of society and those around them? Thank you all for watching, and may Gaben be with you.